Support for The Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, connecting Central Illinois to the world with daily flights on Delta Airlines to Atlanta. Close, convenient, CIRA. More at CIRA.com.
A group of students, educators, and labor leaders has called on Governor J.B. Pritzker to release discretionary funds for higher education. It's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Friday, October 17th. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with that call to help higher education in Illinois during a time of great uncertainty in Washington. More from WGLT's Eric Stock.
Kylie Black is a second-year master's student at Illinois State University. She's studying to become an historian and is applying to PhD programs, but is struggling to find a graduate program not decimated by funding cuts.
I found what I want to do, but I live in a world, in a country that has lost so much faith in my field and also in academia and higher education as a whole. And that's kind of terrifying.
Black joined educators at a news conference calling on Governor J.B. Pritzker to release about $25 million for higher education. State Representative LaShawn Ford chairs the House committee that oversees higher ed funding. Ford says that funding is needed beyond the classroom.
The public universities experience lots of pressures from federal funds being cut, from helping students with homelessness, helping students with behavior and mental health support, and other life challenges that students have.
This year's state budget increases annual funding for higher education 3%, but 2% of that is at the governor's discretion. A spokesperson for the governor says the funding will be released once there is stability in Washington. John Miller, president of University Professionals of Illinois, says public universities in Illinois already face too much uncertainty.
At first it made sense, but then as we've watched higher ed be injured and harmed by the enrollment cuts from international students, the cuts from the federal government, we're at this point where we need this.
ISU cut $12 million from its budget last year. For The Leadoff, I'm Eric Stock.
Here's some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. State officials are warning that the federal government will cut off SNAP food benefits if the government shutdown continues. They say SNAP customers will not have access to any new food benefits starting on November 1st. Governor J.B. Pritzker made more than $10 million in adjusted gross income in 2024. That is according to tax summaries his campaign has released. Tax documents also show he won $1.4 million from gambling. He said that happened playing cards at a Las Vegas casino. And Bloomington Mayor Dan Brady says the city stands ready to help the Kohl's store in Bloomington recover from a recent fire. Brady says he'd like to keep the closure of that store at Eastland Mall as brief as possible. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. Twin City photographer Jason Roblando's forthcoming book, This is Captured Paper, tackles the complex entanglement between the U.S. and the Philippines. Through collages combining archival photographs and his own captured while traveling in the Philippines, Roblando takes on big existential American topics like manifest destiny, colonists who become the colonizers, and who gets to write and define a people and a culture. Roblando's parents immigrated to the U.S. from the Philippines, but like most people who grew up in America, he tells WGLT's Lauren Warnicki, U.S. occupation of the Philippines was a footnote in his high school history class.
It is a thing. And, you know, I had an interest in U.S.-Philippine relations because of my parents. They grew up during World War II. They love, Douglas MacArthur. They love Franklin Roosevelt. But as I kind of started looking back at history and learned about these photographs that were made during the late 19th century, early 20th century, and there are these archives at the University of Michigan, made by a zoologist named Dean Worcester. He was a very zealous photographer, but he went there. He went to the Philippines on academic expeditions to document plants and flora and fauna, and eventually fashioned himself as an expert in Philippine life as he engaged with the people. But with the zoologist's eye and approach.
From a 2025 context, that is so awful and problematic. In an 1899, 1898 context, can we excuse any of it because it was people's only access to understanding anything about the rest of the world? I mean, something you said that sticks with me is like we only get one chance to kind of make a first impression on what Filipinos and Philippine culture is. And our guy Dean is the one who is responsible for that first impression. But how could it have been different?
You know, I think about that question all the time as far as like what was going on in the country and in the world at that time. There are examples of people advocating for the Philippine people and just thinking about what it means to be an imperial power. It could have been, I think it could have been different.
It could have been different.
It's not like empathy was invented in 2025. To be doing this under kind of the guise of science and the government, there are it is despicable. Through some of my collages, I'm trying to kind of disrupt this colonial gaze, whether it be using cut patterns or shielding them, cut patterns that kind of refer to Philippine textile makers, or just kind of like covering them up with another photo and just kind of trying to confuse the viewer and just reclaim that photographic narrative. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm rewriting history, but I think there is a way to engage with these images rather than just accepting them for fact.
Or simply dismissing them on the other hand.
Them,
yeah,
exactly.
And that is it for today. I'm Ryan Denham. The show is produced by Cheyenne Brown. You can subscribe to The Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.